Thank you so much for just making yourself available today. We know that just everyone's so busy right now, and we really appreciate you, because we were like at 5 o'clock this morning. I got a message from Saru. And you know when you're still waking up, because I just went to the toilet and just so happened, you do that naughty thing where you kind of check your phone.
Yeah, naughty thing.
Because you're like, why am I checking my phone at 5? And then you're sending out like responses to emails at 5 o'clock in the morning. You're like, why am I even doing this? But it's the guilt that I carry for not being okay, and always feeling that you're kind of a bit behind the time. Do you know what I mean? And you're constantly chasing.
I appreciated though, Sim, because I was happy she checked her phone at 5 o'clock in the morning. I live for this guilt that sits on you constantly. It's like what keeps me going. I was like, she's gonna be asleep. She won't see this for hours. And true to form, guilt got Sim to me. So. So it got well, but I'm going to step out, Marge. I just wanted to say hi.
Oh, lovely to see you, Sarah.
And just say thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking me.
Thank you for doing it, honestly. But I'll leave you guys to it, yeah?
Okay.
Right. Thanks, Saru.
Bye.
Have a nice evening.
Bye, Saru. Oh,
how you doing, Sue?
I'm good. I've just stepped out of a conference in education. It's a Theatre and Education Alliance conference. And so, you know what it's like when you get asked to do these things, there's definitely, you think long and hard about it as well. And just in terms of the impact that it's going to have, or if it's not going to have impact. And, and so I just was truthful, right? And just spoke my mind and called them to action. So we'll see what happens. I had to step out. But we'll see what happens. But you always leave a little bit mixed when you do these conferences, I think.
Yeah.
Because you sometimes they feel a little redundant. They feel, you come out just thinking it's only going to create change if you want it to create change, and if you're ready to change. And actually, you almost feel as though people should come already with action plans, as opposed to wanting people to work for them.
Yeah. And then spend the conference trying to work it out with other, trying to, tease out what you're going to do instead of sitting in your chair waiting for someone to tell you what you already know really you need to do.
Right? Everything we're saying is there's nothing new. There's nothing new. Yeah. But these are the times that we live in. Everyone's came to be just a little bit more conscious now, and to the things that we've been saying for years. So it's just what it is. But you know what? Thank you, and thank you for just making yourself available. Sorry, I'm just coming down from there, so I'm going to be with you now, Marge. I'm excited that we're here, we're together, we're living in the moment. Yeah. So thank you, first and foremost, for just wanting to be a part of the Beyond the Canon BTC Writers Room. This is something that we're doing. It's still very new, but it's really important that I believe that we, one, know the names of the people whose shoulders we stand on, but equally see their faces and we hear directly from them about their process, about their inspirations, about, why they even write for theatre, right? And then also for us to be a beacon of light, to shed light on others, other people. And so we're doing it's the passing of the baton. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So thank you. So unfortunately we couldn't do it that day, but I'm so happy that we're doing it today, because I can hear you, I can see you really clearly, and today feels like a really good day to do it. It's the same day as the DTEA conference, where we're talking about education, we're talking about curricula, and I think the work that you do really speaks to that. So first and foremost, I'm going to give you a little intro. So for those people who do not know who Roger Stollett is, I'm actually going to read just to make sure that I get it right. You are playwright, performer, director, producer, workshop facilitator, and lecturer. Roger Stollett Adebayo trained extensively with Augusto Boal and is a specialist in theatre of the oppressed. She's worked in theatre, radio, and television on 4 continents over the past 25 years, performing in over 50 productions, writing, devising and directing over 30 plays from Antarctica to Zimbabwe. So thank you so much, Marge. You've done so much. I mean, let's get into this. So first and foremost, we've never really spoken about your training. I've always known that you trained under Augusto Boal, but I never have spoken to you about it in depth. I've never asked you why Augusto? And how did it come to be that you trained under him? And also, how have you adapted that training to create your own process? So if we could just start there, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it came really from when I was doing a degree. I was doing a drama degree because I got kicked off another degree, and I ended up doing drama, much to my family's disapproval, my dad's disapproval. Pretty typical story of like, you should have been doing law, you should have been doing something else. Anyway, I ended up doing drama because it was the only department at Goldsmiths that would accept me, and I really hated it. It felt really irrelevant. That was the worst thing, actually. It was racist, sexist, classist, but maybe even worse than all of those things, it was totally irrelevant. It felt irrelevant to what was happening on the streets in South London at that time, right in the heart of New Cross, Southeast London, where I grew up. And it just felt like I might as well have been, performing in the 19th century. Like, why am I doing this? And I was angry. By the time I got to my third year, I was really angry. I had enough of the racism, the comments. And I decided I was going to go to Ireland, and because the Irish know all about oppression, that was in my head. And I could do an exchange scheme. I could choose Italy and different places in Europe, but I chose to go to Ireland. I was going to write a play about oppression, but I didn't really have a clue what to write. And so I went to the library to get myself some ideas, and then I saw this book, Theatre of the Oppressed, and I took that off the shelf, and that was by Augusto Boal, and it just blew my mind, just opened my mind. The idea that you can use theatre to tell stories from your own life, that you don't have to tell the stories of dead English kings, that you can use theatre in communities, that there doesn't have to be this, you don't have to distinguish between professional and community. And that's always been one of my ethos. I don't really get it, that there's this kind of, two different boxes and we don't kind of do that intersection. And that's what we were doing with the interrogation of Sandra Bland in Chicago.
Exactly.
Saying, some of us are trained, some of us are untrained, some of us are paid, some of us aren't paid, whatever. We're doing this thing together and we've all got skills to bring. And so that ethos of Theatre of the Oppressed, that just really excited me. And then I got really lucky because Augusto came to Dublin to do a weekend course. And I got onto that course for free. And then when I came back to London, he did a 2-week course, and I begged my college, a guy called Jerry Lidstone, who still teaches at Goldsmiths, and said, I haven't got any money, can you please pay for me? Can the college pay for me to do this course? This is back in the day, like we've got a grant and things like that happened. And I did that course, and then I just did a lot more training and worked alongside him in a little bit in South Africa and Brazil. And but yeah, the thing about Theatre of the Oppressed is it's very much attributed to Augusto, and I'm part of that, putting it on my biog and the rest of it. But there's a really brilliant theatre director in Burkina Faso in West Africa, a guy called Prosper Campoere, and he says, we've been doing Theatre of the Oppressed in Africa for thousands of years, and then we met a man called Augusto Boal who invented it. And I just think that's beautiful. Like,
brilliant.
we've been using theatre to debate in our communities from the beginning of what theatre was. And so Augusto wrote a book and he formalized it, but he also, all of the people that he worked with, African people that he worked with, African Brazilians, African Peruvians that he worked with, you don't read their names in those books, but that work would have never happened without those collaborations. And he would accept that as well. So I also, I honor him and that training, but it's bigger than him.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about Atoll Fugard.
Yeah.
I'm like, who wrote these plays?
Yeah. Who really wrote them?
Who really wrote those plays? Okay, so yeah, there's definitely that. But and you're right.
Can you still see me?
Yeah, I can still see you, still hear you.
Great, because my screen's done something funny. So, but that doesn't matter. As long as you can see me,
I can see you really clearly. And there really is something about that, isn't it? It's published, it's publications, and they really truly matter. You know, off the back of doing the Black Play Archive, I really, you know, I came across so many works that are just not published. And because of that, that adds to the issue that we have with our plays anyway, even the ones that are published, in terms of the visibility of them and the accessibility of them. And so you have now, your works are published in 2 amazing anthologies, which we were able to give away to a fantastic who's a leader in his own right. And I know he's going to just go on to just bigger and wonderful things, life-changing, sector-changing things. So fantastic that that's gone to him. But I just wanted you to talk to that really in terms of the publications of your work. Why was that important to you? How that came about?
You're right that it's really important, and unfortunately, you know, that oral traditions and movement traditions are not, in the West anyway, valued as highly as the published word. But yeah, and probably, you know, most of the theatre I've ever made has never been published. I've devised lots of devised work with people like Black Mime Theatre Company. And I'll just give a shout out to them, because Denise Wong from Black Mime was as big an influence as Augusta Boal. But that company lost its funding, got cut by the Arts Council, and their work was ephemeral. Their work was in the body, their work was in the voice, and their work was life-changing. It changed my life, just being in the audience, let alone being on the stage. But you know, there's an archive of that work, but it was never, none of those plays productions were ever published, and the video recordings are not amazing. So it is, it's important to remember through conversations like these and archives, and it's also really important to publish when we can. I was really lucky. Someone came along to see a play who had connections with Oberon, the publisher Oberon, and I ended up in a book called Hidden Gems, edited by Deirdre Osborne, who was the person that came to see the play. And she put me in a collection alongside people like Courtier Newland and my mind's gone black now, but other wonderful writers. And yeah, so I was in that collection. And then when I built up enough plays to be published, then Oberon said, yeah, we'll do plays 1, and then I got lucky and got plays 2 as well. So yeah, you know, big love to Oberon, you know, because they, I mean, as you know, so, you know, absolutely your work's been published with them too. And, you know, those small independent publishers that have, you know, enabled so many of us people so-called on the margins to be published. So I suppose it also speaks to the need for white people to recognize their privilege and recognize their power and recognise the imbalance and the inequalities and do something about it, as Oberon did. And I've never known them to blow their own trumpet or anything like that. I've never even met James Hogan, the owner of that company, the person who founded that company. But you know, when you see the list, you can see that they, you know, that they committed themselves. And so I just hope they're now part of Bloomsbury Methuen, and I hope that they can continue that. But I have a good feeling that they will.
Yeah, I think so. Right, if they don't, then no joking. I've actually worked with both, and I would say that I trust that Bloomsbury will definitely do that. And actually, they are a supporter of BTC Writers Room. They've donated plays for us to give away to students and those on artistic directors or artistic training. So I think that their heart is in the right place there, and they're really well intentioned. So let's talk about you in terms of being a politically minded female playwright. How has that impacted on your career? Because I think that, you know, I don't think that you've ever really held back. Your work is so diverse in terms of themes and topics, and just in terms of characters, and really working with, we'll talk about this in a little while, but just in terms of the cast is always so inclusive. I mean, and it never feels like an add-on. It never feels like, you know, when you have these projects and they're like, oh, we need to do something that has a disabled actor in it, and then they just try to find something that kind of fits into what they already wanted to do. But your work always feels really organic. It really speaks to the people, it really speaks to communities, and it really speaks to issues that we face in the community. So just in terms of what has that meant in terms of your career, getting your plays on and staged, because we know that there's a disparity really when it comes to sort of male and female playwrights.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for saying all that, though. Thank you for, you know, I suppose seeing my work as I'd like it to be seen, and you know, and it's been really hard getting that work on, and I think I realised pretty early on, in terms of that first play that I published, Roger the Antarctic, that I mean, first of all, I was, you know, I came to that through as an actor and somebody who'd done a lot of devised theatre through companies like Black Mime, and just going, right, I want to tell the story of an African-American enslaved woman who cross-dresses as a white man to escape slavery, based on a true story. And I want to take that story all the way to Antarctica. And I want to go to Antarctica and paint my face white and wear male 19th century costume. Okay. Nobody's going to put that on. Nobody's going to put that on. Nobody's going to like, just kind of like, first of all, nobody's going to ever phone me and tell me there's an acting job that and I'll play that role. And nobody's going to want to pick that up. It's too black, it's too queer, it's too feminist, it's too out there, it's too cold, it's too Antarctic, it's too epic, it's too big, it's too narrow, it's just too much. So I felt pretty early on that I would have to just produce it myself. So I'm probably the most reluctant producer in Britain, of just raising the money. I really hate producing. I really hate it. It's like I have to do it, but yeah, so just feeling like we, you know, just don't wait. I mean, I suppose, and that would be something to say to anybody who's young and starting out and listening and watching this interview, that, you know, just don't wait for the phone to ring, don't wait for your email to ping telling you you're good enough and your idea is good enough. You just, you know, if that happens, great, but you know, live for today and just, you know, make it happen now. Yeah, if you really want to do that work. So it's been really hard, but that has also got a price to pay somehow, to be, you know, to do all those roles, acting, directing, writing, blah, 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 producing, teaching. When on the rare occasion these days I get called for an audition, I show them one page of my 8-page CV. And I just smile and pretend I don't have those other 7 pages. Because in Britain, at least, maybe not in America, but in Britain at least, casting directors don't seem to be able to cope with the fact that I have a mind of my own. and that I can write and just act. If I'm just doing an acting job, I can just be an actor. It's okay, I'm happy. You know, it's a relief sometimes. But most people in power that I come across in Britain can't cope with a black woman who can do many things. Know that feeling, Sue?
Exactly.
You know?
My God, I get that all the time. It's so interesting to me because it's like we see the crossover, we see the intersectionality anyway every day, right? Do you know what I mean? Some people do, and I think that's definitely a privileged position to be in, where you can just do one thing, right? And I think that many of us have done, who sort of wear multiple hats, sometimes because we want to and we're pushing for change, but then other times it's because it's a necessity to sustain ourselves in the industry that we have chosen to be in. And I think that for me, it's so bizarre to me that I have the same thing. People go, but what are you? What, how would you describe? And I'm just like, I refuse now to answer it. I'm just like, I'm not answering it. You decide. Have a look at my resume. And actually, I give them all the pages. But I understand it from the perspective that you're talking about, because I think that you're so right. It's such a shame that you have to, in some ways, you know, kind of cast aside all of your experiences in order to make you digestible for other people to cast, right? Because I think that you're so right. The narrow vision people who are the gatekeepers in our industry you know, and these are the majority, not the minority. These are the majority. But I would say that in America, it does feel different. It does feel different, you know. I've had the luxury of people asking me for my resume, CV, whatever you want to call it, and I've circulated, and they're like, wow, how old are you? That's always a question. It's like, how old are you? And I'm sure you get the same thing much when they look at your full CV. They're like, and you are how old? And you've done all of this stuff? And it's like, yeah, you know. And I think that for me, that's always been the definition of a true artist, of a true creative, a true visionary, is to see yourself as more than one thing, right? And to be moved by yourself and your own dreams, but equally to be moved by and responding to what's happening outside of your four walls. So I definitely respect you, salute you, because I see in terms of everything you do, I just think you're just absolutely amazing in terms of really staying on that path, and being all those things. And, you know, screw the triple threat, it's bigger than the triple threat, you know what we're talking about.
Well, right back at you, Sim, because you do the same, you know. You produce, you direct, you publish work, you organize events, you teach, yeah, I mean, yeah, the same, right back at you.
I stand on your shoulders. That's all I'm going to say there. So in terms of, like, we've touched on this a little bit in your answer that you've given, but let's talk about the LGBTQ plus community. And I would love to just hear your thoughts. We just had Pride last month, but your thoughts in terms of what are your hopes for the artistic community in terms of jobs, employment, visibility, representation. I think that sometimes there's a tendency for that conversation to be missed or to be overlooked. And I really applaud you. That sounds really kind of concerned. I don't mean it like that, but I really respect you for speaking out and being a real advocate, you know, for the LGBTQ community. So if you could just talk to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's this banner I really like all over Berlin, and it says "Leave no one behind." I don't know whether banners are going up in London about that as well. But it speaks to so-called refugees. Leave no one behind, and I really like that phrase, and I suppose that's how I feel as an artist and as a Black artist, because that's always been my first identification. And very much in the sense of Black consciousness, in Steve Biko's sense of Black consciousness, knowing that I have a white mother and a Black father, an African father, but that Blackness has always been more than that, you know, in terms of a political identity, a political consciousness. And yeah, so, but I was, you know, and I've always identified more in that respect as a Black artist first and foremost.
Yeah.
And that's I suppose because I came out much later in life. I came out in my 20s, and you can't necessarily, you know, see my sexual identity or preference or so, and I you know, when I went to my first ever Pride, I didn't really get it. I get it a bit more now, but I didn't really get it, because I was like, well, why would you cover up who you are? Like, why would anyone do that? Because when you're Black, you walk the streets in London in the 70s and 80s, you know, you're seen anyway. Like
Right.
You know, but I get it now, and I get the struggles that a lot of people go through.
Right.
But to be out, proud, vocal, there's, you know, I haven't seen it, you know, an alternative way of being. You know, once I could accept in myself that I was gay, I just, you yeah, I just don't know any other way of living. So that comes through in my artwork, both on a personal level in terms of my own identity, but also the ethos of not leaving anyone behind, in that as a people still in a movement. We haven't stopped being in a movement for 400 years, and we are in a movement that no one should be left behind in that movement. And so that includes people of all sexual orientations, and that includes deaf people and disabled people and old people and people with albinism and people who are indigenous and people who are whatever, tall and short and big and small, and you know. So for me, it's just part of that.
Yeah.
Muslim and Christian and atheist too. That feels really, really important for me, and it's bugged me and bothered me as an artist all along that people get left behind and identities get left behind, communities get left behind, sidelined. That, you know, and that song always in my head, am I black enough for you? Am I black enough for you? Am I black enough for you? Like,
that's something in my head now. Thanks, Marge.
Yeah, sorry, earworms. You know, like, so if you're black, then you're black enough.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what accent you've got, what sexual orientation you've got.
That's right.
You know, if that is your lived experience, then we're all in this together. And I suppose that's really what I'm about. And so my sexual identity and LGBT is just part of that, as much as part of being a woman. But I suppose I would hope that even if I had stayed married to a man and identified as heterosexual and was never ever attracted to women, I hope if I was heterosexual that I would still feel like that, you know, that it's just part of the wholeness of who we are as a people of African descent. I think that I've got around the houses with that.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, because I think whenever I have conversations, I always talk to everything, really. You know what I mean? I don't kind of go, oh no, but if you're black and I don't have that concept in my head of just sort of fitting everything and containing everything, because we are, when I come in, I represent, and I hope that that's not overstepping the mark in some people's eyes, but I do represent my community, you know what I mean, to the fullest. You know, and I really am, you know, so I stand with you in terms of that, like 100%. So let's talk about, who do you write for? Who is it that you write for? We've been asking every writer this, and it's really interesting, the responses that we get, but I'm really intrigued by what you have to say, Marge, in terms of who do you write for?
I mean, I write for myself because I need it. I write for my own, and I've always written for my own healing, my own therapy, to get me through. I'll maybe if a play of mine or work of mine is never ever published or produced again, I'll still write. Even if I'm in a prison cell alone, I'll find a way of writing. So fundamentally, I write for myself because it helps me survive. And and you know, I could say very generally, it's, you know, everyone else, anyone who wants to listen, anyone who wants to be involved, and that's true. And I welcome all, you know, and I'm excited by anyone and everyone. And you know, I get letters or emails from people in places in the world. I think, wow, you know, I've got this wonderful researcher, she's writing a PhD about my plays. I'm in Spain, and I'm like, wow, amazing. And I'm really honoured by it. But in terms of theatre, in terms of plays, in my heart of hearts, and I hesitate to say this because people are going to go, oh no, what about me?
No.
So I write for everyone, but in my heart of hearts, it's I really write for London. I write for Londoners. And it might sound a bit weird that I'm in Berlin and saying that, but in my heart of hearts, I write for my hometown, I suppose. And I'm totally excited by the idea of that work being in Chicago or South Africa, and that's also been great. But if I suppose there's, may I stand corrected, in Cape Town, but if we'd never come to London, I would have felt really sad, you know, like it has to come to London as well.
Yeah.
So for everyone, me and London and what London represents for me, which is, the most, I hate the phrase diversity, it's so overused, but the city that looks like the planet. And I suppose that's deep for me because of such a, you know, when you grow up feeling without a deep sense of belonging. I'm sorry about the sound outside, but a sense of belonging, and that I know.
Yeah, is that like there's like a high.
It's a high pitched sound. Hopefully it will stop.
Yeah, there was just a high pitched sound. It's gone now though.
Yeah. But yeah, that sense of where do I belong? But I know I'm from London, and that British passport is a bit contested for colonial and all kinds of reasons. There's lots of people would even question whether I should have a British passport still. Certainly questioned it when I was growing up. Being a Nigerian is questioned. Being Danish is definitely questioned. Where do I belong? Who am I? I know that London is my hometown. I love Rio in Brazil because I could walk the streets of Rio.
Yes.
And whatever shade you are, you can be Brazilian. But as soon as I open my mouth, I'm not Brazilian anymore. But I know that London is my home. So I suppose I write for home as well. I write for my hometown and everybody else. But please, if you're listening to this in Leeds and you want to put on one of my plays, please put it on.
Exactly. No, still put on the play, but we're just asking just to kind of unpack certain things. But that's just for our, you know, our little private conversation with Marge. You know, this is not a sabotage. So I have a question, because when I think of people who actually perform in their own work, so I think of you, I think of Yolanda Mercy, I think of Lem Sase, I think of, you know, these are the sort of people that come in my mind. But I really think of you first, if I'm honest. And how did that decision come about? And for those people who may be considering performing in their own play, what are the challenges, but what also are the benefits of doing
that? From an acting point of view, you get to write yourself a fantastic part, you know, like, yeah. I mean, I played Muhammad Ali. Yeah.
If you have not read Muhammad Ali and Me, I always go on about it with Marge. I mean, she's so sick of me saying it, but I'm like, I love that play.
That's all, bless. I mean, it's just that thing, you know. Who's gonna cast a woman in that? Who's gonna cast a black woman in that? Pushing 50, you know, like me. I'm gonna cast me. You know,
right.
So, yeah, to play the roles you really want to play, but more importantly, tell the stories you really want to tell. I mean, it's a great honor. It's great honor, great privilege. But I wouldn't direct myself. I think that's one step. You know, you need someone out there. I think being your audience, which I think a director really is, like a really privileged audience member. They're the number one audience member who's going to tell you what they want more of and less of and the rest of it. So I wouldn't direct myself because I respect my audience too much, and the director is, for me, audience. But I think, yeah, the challenges of writing, and I don't find writing and directing so much of a challenge. What I find a real challenge is writing and acting, but so much of a challenge. But acting, writing and producing, I think is really hard, because it's really horrible being on stage and in the some part of your brain is counting the tickets that you sold and whether you need to push the marketing harder tomorrow. That's horrible. It's horrible. And if you could, I think if anyone can avoid doing that, that's great, you know, because you shouldn't be worrying about money and about ticket sales and about all of those other, all that other stuff, I think, when you're in the rehearsal room. And I think what's really hard is for other people. I know with Muhammad Ali and me, because of some of the content and dealing with child abuse in that piece and that being semi-autobiographical, it was really hard at some stages for the other performers and the director to be in the same room as the person in the play, you know, and to kind of do a scene of abuse and then have tea break together. So that's, I think, never to underestimate what the challenge is for other people. And also in terms of being a producer and all of those things, how hard it is to, you know, to be the director, but the actor on stage is writing your check, you know, that can be a challenge, and you need to be able to have a good relationship with, I had a great relationship and have a great relationship with Amma Ray, who's now at Irvine in California, who is so humble and was totally cool with that dynamic and respected that dynamic and never had any issues giving me a strong note or correcting me, and me also being the person who was raising the funds and stuff like that. So but I think not everybody, I don't think that would suit everybody in terms of directors.
Yeah.
It's a bit challenging wearing different hats, you know, and sometimes she had to tell me, Moj, I need you to be the actor right now and not the writer, you know, we need to cut this, or we need to do this, or and you need to respect the fact that this is the way we need it to be. So it's yeah, it takes a real negotiation of relationships to be able to do that. It's hard.
And it's not for everyone, but you do it amazingly, and so the other people that I've mentioned do it amazingly well as well. But yeah, these are all the things to consider, so thank you for sharing that. And sort of last question before we go into the plays that you would recommend. You're in Berlin, so being in Berlin at this time of, like, oh god, what do we even call it? Brexit, Trump administration, oh my goodness, the deportation of the Windrush generation, and, you know, and the uprising that's happening, Black Lives Matter. What do you believe is the responsibility of Black artists today in this climate?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds obvious, I guess, but the responsibility is to be in dialogue with all of those subjects that you've mentioned, and to consider our place in history. What was that African proverb? The tales of the lion or something are always told by the hunter. I'm probably messing up some great proverb, but we, you know, it's really, really important that we tell this history in our own voices, and we don't leave it to others to tell this history. There's been too much of that, and so we need to write this. We need to write what's happening right now, or speak it, or sing it, or paint it, or whatever, film it, for, you know, for the generations to come, for people in 100 years' time. In 100 years' time, to know that, you know, to be able to see it through the eyes that we saw it. Yeah, it's our responsibility is to our great grandchildren, I think, to 100 years' time and beyond.
Beautifully said, as always, Moj. So let's go into, on that note, in terms of talking about who tells the stories, right? And what are the stories then that have informed your own career, inspired you to write, maybe, or stories that you've been able to see yourself, you know, on stages. So what plays would you recommend? What are the 3 plays that you would recommend, or that you believe that would have been so amazing if you would have got your hands on before you entered into the professional industry?
Yeah, this is the part that I was really looking forward to. This is enough about me. Yeah, thank you for asking this question. And it's such a fantastic idea, Sim. The pass the baton and whose shoulders are we standing on and all of that. It's just beautiful. So I'm sure I'm not the only person to have said, I hope I'm not the only person to have said, for coloured girls who've considered suicide, When the Rainbow is Enough, Tazake Shange, 1974, it's still the most important play, probably the most important text I ever read. When I read that, and it's a bit of a cheat because I did read it kind of before I went into the industry, but you're going to allow it. Thank you.
Me too. That was
but perhaps I would never have gone into the industry without it. And so perhaps that's important for folks as well. I remember I read it at college, and it was, and I did say all that stuff about college being so racist and sexist and the rest of it, but we never studied that play. I just found it in the library. And that's what I'd always encourage students to do, is look where they don't tell you to look in the library. Don't wait for them. Look online and look in the library, and go to the places they don't tell you. The two most important things I ever read in college were things that nobody told me to read: Theatre of the Oppressed and For Coloured Girls. Yeah. And I think I felt like I had considered suicide, so I picked up that book. And it was just, wow. I just thought, oh, a play doesn't have to be 3-act drama with one person coming in, this happening, and this.
Yes.
A play can be ritual, a play can be music, a play can be dance, a play can be full of colour. A play, more importantly, can be about women's stories, Black women's stories, can jump in time, can sing off the page. Yeah, I mean, it's still my go-to. It changed everything. Because I thought, I don't have to be like anybody else. This writer is not like anybody else. I don't have to be like anybody else. And it took me a long time to write anything after that, but it stayed with me now. I think I always am trying to write choreo poetry in some way, in the way that she named her own form. That for us as people of the African diaspora, we live in this English language. Many of us, we live in languages that are not our home. We live in it, but I don't speak any other language fluently, but I know there are other languages in my ancestry, and there are not enough words in this English language to express that. And she said, you know what, you can call it a play if you like. I'm calling it choreo poetry. And the fact that you know what I mean? It's that she defined her own work in her own language, and said, and this, naming oneself, and naming your own form. And I'm so grateful for her. I'm so grateful for that work and all of the women that made that piece together.
It saved a lot of us, I think, that work. It was just so powerful, to see yourself, to see your stories, to see poetry on the page being performed. I just think it's just amazing. So the next play, Marge.
The next play, maybe so many people won't have heard of, so I'm really glad to share this one. It's a play called Basin, and it's by Jacqueline Roudet. It's in, I think it's Black Plays 2, a very old Methuen edition, an old Methuen anthology. They publish these Black Plays series, and I think it was in Black Plays 2 or 3, I can't remember now. Basin.
It was in Black Plays 2, because I've got Black Plays 3 with me. So okay. I believe it's Black Plays 2.
Great. And this one I didn't read until very recently. Maybe 10 years ago or something like that. Recently, that's recent when you're my age. And it's a really simple story of friendship in a flat in London in the late 80s. Friendship between 3 Black women, 2 of whom fall in love with each other. And the other friend has got more than a bit of a problem with that. But I won't give the whole story away. Maybe people want to read it. She's got a bit of a problem with that. But all of them come to their own understanding of each other. And these two friends that fall in love, they call themselves Zami, which is a French Caribbean word for women who love each other. And that can be a sexual love, but it doesn't have to be a sexual love. It's the deep, deep love that women can have for each other. And Audre Lorde famously used it in her autobiography. She called it Zami, a new spelling of my name, and kind of claiming that French Caribbean word rather than using the word lesbian or gay or queer or whatever. And it was so powerful for me when I read that they, like I've said about Shanghai's creating, maybe there's a theme now of naming your own art form. They claim their own cultural history and name themselves in their own terms, and actually resist European language and a European framework for defining their love for each other. And I think possibly, and I wish I'd read it. I wish I'd read it when I was 13 or 18. When did it come out? I would have been 16. If I'd read it when I was 16, I would have never got married to the man I married. No offense to him. He was a lovely man, but I would have never got married. I would have never repressed my sexuality so much. I would have seen that it's possible to, for women to love women. And it also doesn't have to be a burden. It doesn't have to be a label. It doesn't have to be something you're carrying around on your back. It doesn't have to be a flag that you wave in the street if you don't want to wave it. You can love who you want to love and consensually use your body sensually in whatever way you want with another person who consensually wants to do that with you too. Like, why does it have to be such a thing? And, this whole idea of homosexual, so many people say that homosexuality is a white thing, is a European thing, and people have said that to me, and I've read it, and you know what, they got a point, because it was a term. Homosexual was a term invented by a Swiss German doctor to define a certain category of people. Now, I'm cool with the word gay, I'm cool with lesbian, calling myself queer, all of those identities. Don't get me wrong, like, I'm proud of who I am, and I do wave the flag, and I do march for pride, and I will fight for our rights. But the idea of this strict category that you sit in, that is defined by some Swiss doctor from the mid-19th century, I'm not surprised a lot of people of African descent resist that kind of notion. But I remember I worked in a factory years ago for my summer holidays, 3 months, and this woman from the Gambia kept touching my ass every time I wonder if she's listening to this. Every time she went past me in the factory, she's touching my ass, squeezing my bum.
Wow.
And I was straight, heterosexual, born again Christian at the time, totally repressing my sexuality, totally freaked out about this. She kept touching my bum, and she shouldn't have been touching my bum because she didn't have permission. So anyway, that's another thing. But I was like, she's a lesbian, with my repressed gay homophobic self. And I said to one guy that she knew, is she lesbian? And he said, oh no, we don't have lesbian in Africa. I said, what? No, we don't have this thing in Africa. I said, but she keeps touching my bum. She said, yeah, she likes you. And he was like, he saw absolutely no contradiction. He's like, she wasn't a lesbian, but she did want to sleep with me. And it's like, it never happened. But like, it wasn't within his frame of reference. There wasn't a right language. It didn't explain to him. So that's why I love Basin, because these women are just getting on with loving each other. One of their friends has got a big problem with it, but she also comes to a realization that it's important that in a world where we're so suppressed by patriarchy, by racism, why suppress our bodies? Why suppress our love and our desire for each other? Why let that win, you know? So I don't know whether I'm expressing that right, but it's a beautifully written play. And Jacqueline Roudet also never identified with one particular sexuality in any interview or anything like that. So I wish I'd read that years ago. I think I would have come out earlier.
I'm so happy you mentioned her name as well, because I think that's one of the names that we just don't hear. We don't hear about her. I mean, I came across Jacqueline and her work through doing the Black Play Archive, but before that point, and even after that point, I haven't heard her name being used.
Have you met her?
No, I haven't met her.
I'd love to.
I would love to meet her.
Yeah, it's a beautiful play. No, I've never been able to trace her. I think she might be the Caribbean. I don't know.
Yeah.
Dominica. Born in Dominica, I think. But yeah, and it's just a beautifully written story. I think simple storytelling, but the best storytelling, simple storytelling.
And then last but not least,
Ragamuffin.
When I saw that you was going to say this, I was like, oh man. But you know what? It's so hard to just choose 3 plays. I was like, oh my God.
It's really hard. It's really hard. So many more. But genuinely, I wish I'd read this before I did any work in the theatre, or whether I'd studied. I read it. Yeah. And more importantly, I wish I'd seen it. I never saw it.
I was begging Theatre Royal Stratford East to do this play, and they passed on it, man. I was like, what?
They've got to bring it back. They've got to bring it back. It's been out 3 times or something like that, but next generation.
This play, you have to do this play. And he was just like,
it's got to be done today. It's so important.
Come on.
Talk about Black Lives Matter. Yeah, Ragamuffin, Armani Naftali.
Come on. Who is amazing.
Yeah. And everybody, I don't know why I didn't see it. Everybody was talking about it. I think I was so cynical about theatre when I was younger as well. It's like, what's that going to be, you know? And I was maybe just, I don't know, cynical, arrogant, bored and irritated with most theatre. You know, but I missed such an opportunity there. And just this, but it's worth it. It's a good read anyway.
It's a fantastic read, and it feels so epic, right? Anyway, no spoilers. I so want to get into this play, but no spoilers. But
you've got to read it. That's a good thing. Yeah. Whoever's listening, you haven't read Ragamuffin by Armani Naftali. It's published by Oberon. Buy it, read it.
Read it. It is. I'm so happy you've chosen the 3 plays you've chosen. I'm just like, yes. They are just like bomb. Like, they are the best 3 plays. Like, you know, you're getting me so super duper excited right now, because we're really also speaking to that the Black experience. And I think it's important for younger people to read that, because we don't need people to reinvent the wheel. We have these stories, they exist in our canon. And then it's like, the charge is, how are you going to respond to what's going on in the world, right? Because these people were. But yeah, Ragamuffin. Oh, I don't know if you want to say anything more about that, but Ragamuffin was
just in terms of form, I suppose, it's like you said, it's epic. It's ritual theatre.
Yes.
It's the courtroom. It's the dance. It's the call and response.
Yes.
It's the storytelling, and it's leaping in time from Haiti, Toussaint Louverture Revolution, first Black independent state, to Broadwater Farm and the 80s, killing of Cynthia Jarrett, and just this brilliant, it's structurally brilliant, and right in the middle of it, this sort of trial of the ragamuffin, and then you have to question when you are pointing the finger at a criminalized young Black man, you cannot point that finger, you cannot make that judgment without and you shouldn't make that judgment anyway, but you can't see him outside of the context of slave rebellion and uprising in Haiti to uprisings in London in the 80s and uprisings now, that you have to rethink this charge of criminal. I just think it's just brilliant. Just brilliant.
Oh.
And some legends were in it. Benji Reed.
Yes.
So many people. Antonia Kemikoka, Patrice Nimbana. So many really, really important Black artists were in that production and remember it, but I didn't see it.
Man, let me tell you, when I read that play, I was like, I actually spoke to Amani because I was like, oh, Molly, what is this? Like, come on. And when you read his other plays, I don't think they've been published actually, but he just has such, I really envy sometimes, I don't actually envy a lot of people, but I envy people that can do this. They have such a grasp on history, and they're able to sort of funnel it into their work and in a way that is so just brilliant, mind-blowing, like literally just makes you have a history lesson in such a way that sort of takes you on the journey, slaps you up a little bit as well, but also gives you a story that you want to revisit. You know what I mean? Like you want to revisit those plays because they're so rich, like you said, in form, in storytelling, in really understanding what they're dared to do. You know what I mean? Like it's not just like come to the theatre, leave, have a drink, you know what I mean, go out for a dinner. It's like, you know, let's actually educate. Let's entertain, but actually let's put you in the position. Let's put you in the position of this, of the sort of the society, the issue that's taking place, so you can see it in a in a dimensional way that makes it even so much more visceral. Like I just think he's just a genius. But he's definitely just a historian, really. He's an historian.
Yeah, absolutely. And
you know,
is the craft with language as well is just fantastic. And
come on,
to bring that storytelling voice, that poetry, that lyricism to the page and the stage like that is just phenomenal.
Seriously, Marge, man, I just have to give it to you. Thank you so much for this. This has literally got me excited. I get so passionate about plays and about history, and I'm just like, oh, when I hear your plays that you've recommended, like seriously, guys, if you should have a pen and paper, you should be on your Amazon right now and ordering these plays because, you know, we need these plays, these stories to live on beyond us. You know, we need them to be passed down generations, you know what I mean? And this is something that's a keepsake. It's so interesting because I was talking to a finance advisor and he was saying, you know, you think about your will, you know, and I was like, well, look, I might not have a lot, but what I do have is a library of plays, and who do I give that to? And actually that's the legacy, right? That's what we should be passing on. So that's why we're doing BTC Writers Room, saying, look, we want everyone to have a piece of the legacy, and for you to also be encouraged and to then, you know, invest in other plays, you know, invest in some of these plays that have been mentioned. So I thank you so much.
Thank you, Sim. Thank you.
Shining a light on these amazing playwrights. I really do. Thank you so much, Marge.
Thank you.
Much love to you, Marge.
Much love. Take care.
You too. Bye.
See you soon. Bye now. Bye.
Bye.